I'm Eliza Leon-Jones. I'm the dietitian that works for Restaurant Associates on the Harvard Medical School campus here, and I'll let Chef introduce himself.
Hi, I'm Rahul, and I'm the executive chef for both the dining locations, that is the Elements and the Courtyard and the Atrium and the new edition of the Bombay Cafe. And so welcome to our cooking show here, and we call it a VTK because we're doing everything virtual. And we almost say like this is our 11th VTK since we started during the pandemic. And welcome for that. And we have a lot of great information, cooking wise, skill wise, blending the tastes, and also nutrition that Eliza takes care of. Welcome. Thank you.
Yes, yeah, we've gotten a good amount of these under our belt now, which is super fun. And we always do each time. We always try to, we always have some culinary learning objectives and some nutrition learning objectives. So today's class, we are doing, as you all received the recipe, we're doing a winter squash soup. And on the side, there's going to be a pear and goat cheese tostada. So we're serving that with it as well. And the theme that we're focusing on today is fall flavors. So Chef Rahul will explain that as we're going through. And we're also going to be doing a little bit of mindful eating stuff throughout the class. And hopefully at the end, we'll all finish together, those of us cooking along, and we can taste it together and see if you think anything should be added or make any modifications, depending on your own personal taste preferences. Everyone has different taste preferences. So our learning objectives for today, we hope that you will become familiar with the traditional seasonal autumn flavors, and you'll also learn to identify the individual flavors in a dish and figure out what's missing as we go along. So we encourage you, as we're going through this cooking process, safely and carefully blow off the hot food, but take a little taste each time we add something. And there's nothing in this recipe that's not safe to eat when raw. This is a vegan recipe, so you can taste as we go along. And for nutrition, we hope that you will understand the nutrition benefits of winter squash, which I will sprinkle in throughout there. And also, again, like I said, we're going to talk about some mindful eating things. So if you're cooking along and if at any point we're going too fast, wave us down, let us know that we need to slow down. Or again, if you have any questions, just shout them out. And I'm just checking to make sure I'm not missing any notes. So yeah, you all have the recipe, but if you want to modify it, if you like more salt or more pepper or more sage or anything like that throughout it, go ahead and add it. Make it your own. So with that, I'm going to pass it to Rahul to introduce these recipes a bit more, to explain any kitchen and food safety points and our plan of work for the class, and then we'll get right into it. So Rahul can kick that off.
Hello, everyone, and welcome to the people who just joined. So first, we're going to make a seasonal dish today, and there's going to be a squash soup. And we're going to make the soup. There'll be some cutting involved in there, and there'll be hot cooking involved. So safety first, last, and always. We have to be careful that we'll be handling knife, so we don't have. We are pretty organized. We have a set up cutting board, proper knife, and we have some kitchen gloves, kitchen mitts, or oven mitts, or anything that we can hold the hot pots, pan, or whatever that we're using. So these are very important. Then the second quick point is before we start cooking is a plan of work, and we will talk through it as we cook. So plan of work is like we start with the product that's going to take the longest amount of time to cook, and gradually we keep adding and hopping onto the other items such that our product is ready all at the same time. So it is at the right doneness, it is at the right taste, it is the right texture, and it is the best of it because we are using the best of the ingredients, and those are seasonal. So we will get started with doing the squash, and as we go, we will talk about it. So as you see, we end up in the backdrop, except for one pumpkin. These are all different squashes here. So these are all handy squashes that you can find, beautiful exotic squashes in the farmer's market, or you may go to any of the farms to apple pick or anything. You will definitely find squashes over there in local farms. And we have chosen to use the butternut squash today because this is one of the most versatile and very easily available, because it's most of the time it is available throughout the year, and especially in the fall is the best, because fall is like, as we know, is the best time of the year, especially in Massachusetts, because we're getting the best of the summer, which is pretty short, and then we're getting into the fall, and then where the apple and all this good stuff is coming up, like apple, figs, and pears, and like all the persimmons and all fall items are available. So we're starting with the squash. So what we're gonna do is here, I have taken a whole squash, and I just wanted to display that how we're gonna peel it. So for peeling this, we need a Y peeler. Usually, I recommend using this Y peeler because it helps with the leverage instead of a French peeler. And then what we do is here, we go here and then we start peeling it. So as you will see that the squash skin is naturally a little hard, and some squash you'll be surprised to see that could be eaten with the skin. And one of them happen to be the delicata squash. That is like the skin is like edible in there. This skin is edible as well, but it is too chewy and it is not preferred to be ingested. So once we peel our squash, it's pretty easy to peel it. We go till the end and we don't want to waste anything. And all the peel are used in the compost. And then after that, we go to the other side to the bulb. And we see this is a very meaty squash. And the meaty squash, what happens is like when we make a soup, it is gonna melt inside the soup while it is cooking, and it will thicken the soup by itself. So that means you will not need to thicken the soup with any of the thickening agents, as you may see at some places they may use roux, some recipes use roux, and not required. So this is very versatile vegetable, as I said, because it picks on flavors very quick, and it has got a nice body to it. And for example, if you cook it with sage, it will pick up the flavor from the sage and complement it. And as we go down the process, we will see that what spices we are using with it. And here is my squash that is peeled completely. And so it took us like about 2 minutes, less than 2 minutes to peel the squash. Now this is all compost. Let me get it out of the way. And go with a knife. And you're gonna hold it here. And as I said, this is a round vegetable. It rolls and it could easily give you a nick or injure you. So first, I'm gonna take out the end off here and then end off here, just a little bit of it. So this is compost. And now we have a perfectly clean squash. So you can see, like properly peeled and properly clean. Now this part is meaty, as we know, and the seeds are there. And we're gonna utilize something with the seeds. So what we're gonna do, we're gonna open right here. And this is the seed part of it, and as you see here, I'm going to save these seeds. We have a use for these seeds. We're going to use these seeds as a garnish. Now, as you see, this is a rolling vegetable. So if we try to cut it, like it may be very dangerous. So first, what we do is we take out one side of it. Careful, the other first hand here, and then after that we go here, cut it, and we put this side. So this prevents it from rolling. So you do not, by mistake, hurt yourself. And what we do is now we're gonna dice it up. So as the idea of dicing this is like you dice it small or medium size, such that it is easy to cook. And we want to finish this recipe in a timely manner. But if you have a whole afternoon or a little more time to that, so we can chop it up any size. And so this is like we make the planks first of all. So this is what we call plank. And then after that, we go here, and this regardless, I'm doing this because I wanted to demonstrate a way to cut the squash, which could be utilized in any other preparation as well, if you want to roast them off or something like that, and also to facilitate the cooking of it. So the smaller it is cut, and so this is we are planning, we'll be doing it as a scratch cooking recipe, but even this recipe could be made with roasting the squash and taking out the pulp, and many ways it could be done. But however, we want to do a one-pot recipe here, and that's why we have cut this up like this. So once we have cut this here, we're going to dice it small, and then we're going to weigh it. Okay. So all the squashes, as you know, are different sizes. Right? We have this here, and then we're going to dice this up. So all the squashes are different sizes, and we have tested this recipe several times and seen that the amount is pretty much approximate where we are Correct. So if you are anywhere close to it, we will be having a soup with a proper thickness, proper consistency, and that will be like a good ratio of all the ingredients in there.
One thing to mention also, so you see how orange the inside of this squash is, and a lot or most, I think, winter squashes have that orangey flesh inside. That anytime you see that orange color, that means this food is very rich in beta carotene, which is when we eat it, beta carotene is converted into vitamin A. So all orange vegetables like this are very rich in vitamin A. And what's also important is that in this soup, we're adding coconut milk, but it doesn't have to be coconut milk. It could be whole dairy milk, whatever your preferred milk is. However, it should have some kind of fat in it because vitamin A is a fat soluble vitamin. So when you eat vitamin A with a fat source, that allows your body to absorb the most out of that vitamin A.
So now here we're ready with the guts of the squash, and we're going to take out the seeds because we're going to toast this seed and we're going to garnish the soup with it. So these seeds could be easily scraped, and it is one more way to demonstrate how sustainable we can be and utilize more or less everything that is edible and not get rid of the stuff that could have been a part of the dish, complement the dish, and but was not used. So this is what we are doing. So we take the seeds out, and I'm gonna have a couple of seeds here that is coming from the, and we're gonna toast these seeds at a later point. So we're gonna prep this and we put it aside, and I'm gonna hold it for later to go inside the oven, and then we're gonna roast it off. That's why your oven is turned on already, and whoever is cooking along with us, the oven should be turned on, and then we have all our seeds here. So these seeds what will happen when it goes inside the oven? They will start to dehydrate, and after dehydrated, the outer shell will be leaving the meat inside, and then after that that's gonna be our toasted seeds, right?
Yep. So while Rahul is prepping the rest of that squash there, the seeds. So not only is it sustainable to use the seeds, it's also, it adds like an extra. We're using it as a garnish. So the seeds are going to add a crunch and add a different texture to the soup. And seeds have a totally different nutrient profile than the squash itself. Seeds and nuts are oftentimes grouped together because they are a great source of unsaturated fats, of protein and fiber. So you're getting a lot out of just those little seeds. And winter squash have seeds that are big enough that can be used as their own. You can roast them up and just like eat them as a snack. We used to do that growing up when we'd be carving pumpkins. My mom would roast up all the pumpkin seeds, and it was always super fun.
So this is our pumpkin. This is the right amount of squash, luckily, that we wanted, and then we're going to reserve that aside, and then we're going to go with the next process. So now next is, as we know, we have already chopped the onion, ginger and garlic. So we're going to start sauteing it now because this recipe moves faster. And the lengthiest, as we talk about the plan of work, so the lengthiest time on this recipe is for the liquid and the heat to work together and break the squash down. Remember, the squash when it's raw is very, very hard, you will see it. But once it is subjected to moisture and heat, it breaks down very quickly. It breaks down quicker than potatoes. Okay? So it's very, very easy to cook. So I'm going to move my stove over here, and then we'll see what we do.
And again, for any of you that joined us a little bit late, if you are cooking along with us, here's your reminder to preheat your oven to 350. That's what we're going to use for making the tostada and toasting up those seeds later.
So I'm using induction cooker, and I believe you have either a gas or electric range, however you're working on, and we go to the high heat. So such that because we want to saute some of the flavoring additives to this recipe. And so my pan is getting heated up. Now here, some kind of fat is required to use, and like it is up to you. You may want to use whatever kind of fat, but like I have chosen to use canola oil because it's neutral, and then it goes really well. It is a high flash point, and then we go with that. So I'm going to put my oil in here. Right.
The pan is on high heat, right?
High heat.
Okay.
High heat here. So again, as we said, we're gonna get ready with like once we get to the stove, we are using hot energized equipment, so we should be very safe, and we have our kitchen towel, kitchen mitts, or anything that you have to handle heat if required, ready to go. Okay? Now, of course, we have a spoon to stir. Now we're gonna go with the onions, right? So this is like our 3 cups of onions. I'm gonna put the onions here. So onion, as you know, are cooked at different degrees of doneness. So like one of them would be like the caramelized onion, that is like the extreme of it, and we just saute it and we eat it raw in the salads, and many other applications we pickle them. But then here where we're using it, we're going to saute it so that it provides its unique flavor and provides its body to the soup. And we're going to cook it till it gets a little translucent. So it is like not like completely raw with a crunch, but it is not caramelized either. Because if we caramelize this, the soup may acquire a darker color to it. So we're gonna go here.
Yeah, that's a good, like a pretty standard tip when you start cooking something with onions, to say cook the onions until translucent, and then you move on to the next step. That's a pretty standard recipe component.
Because onions have their natural sugar in them and also the juice. So when it's subjected to heat, the sugar turns into a kind of caramel and then start giving it a dark color. And also, which if it is not handled properly, that sugar can turn into a bitter caramel. So that could be a bad experience with that onion. So now we see that we have sauteed the onion and they are getting translucent. And how you know that we are cooking it right? And it's like you see, it is like kind of simmering into the juice and the oil right here. Now we go from here, and I'm going to add my garlic to that. Then my ginger. And I add my ginger and garlic, and then I'm going to add sage. So sage complements the squash, and sage is well known to represent fall. So fall flavor, most of the fall flavor, sage is one of the choicest herbs to be used with poultry, with kind of vegetable and meat prep, and it complements the squash very well. So I have to chop sage that I'm going to put over here, and this fresh chopped sage, and we saute this. So at this point, the ginger, and why we adding ginger, because it's not an Asian recipe, but why we are adding the ginger, because ginger complements the squash very well, and it's going to be the spice that we're using with it is going to be the clove and then the cardamom. So here I want to just talk a little bit about mindful cooking and like what flavors marry each other. So one of them is like it's like we are taking the ginger and we complementing it with some translucent cooked onions and garlic. And to add more to that, add the spice note to it, we are using cardamom. Okay, so cardamom you can find in powder form or whole green. So we're going to add some cardamom here. Then after that, we're going to add cloves, and see where we are going. We are going almost towards pumpkin spice mix right here, and cinnamon. Okay, so these are complementing spices that helps the squash comes up to it, brings the flavor out of the squash, and then if they all work in a very well, it's a very good culinary symphony altogether.
So at this point we've added the onion, the ginger, garlic, sage, cinnamon, cardamom, and cloves. We've added all of those ingredients already.
Yeah, so the powder ingredients are in, and now we're going to add our squash. Okay.
And we also have We have 3 teaspoons of kosher salt and 1 teaspoon of black pepper on this recipe for 4 servings. However, that salt and pepper is a perfect opportunity for how you can modify this to your taste. When we first tested this recipe, we did a little bit too much pepper for both of our tastes, so we've cut it down a little bit. But if you really like it peppery, then you can always add more than that.
We're using kosher salt and pepper to it.
So we just added the salt and pepper, and we're mixing it all together now. So what we're doing first is we're browning and sort of softening up all of the solid components of the soup before we add the liquid. And by browning them, it helps to develop the flavor. Like Rahul was saying about the onions we could have cooked for a really long time and caramelized them, but that's not what this recipe calls for necessarily. And we also don't have enough time, but we still, you know, are developing lots of flavor with just this, you know, 5 to 10 minute saute.
So now once we have sauteed this up and gradually it is the cubes of the squash, they will come up to temperature. And once they come up to temperature, then they will be looking for more moisture to cook ahead, right? So you see, like we can start cutting it. You can hear it is charring, like it's a sound of cooking, like when it's hitting the heat. So it's like kind of charred, and then we're gonna add water to that. So that is like 2 cups of water in your recipe right there. And we're gonna put the water in there, and now you will see that is somewhere taking a form of a soup or a stew. See, that's where you want to be.
And also, this is like the deglaze process. If you've done these classes with us before, or if you've heard that term, when you cook something on high heat and it gets browned and it leaves sort of like a brown residue at the bottom of the pan, when you add water and you bring it to a boil, it loosens up all that flavor that's stuck to the pan. It deglazes the pan. So that's what we're doing now.
Yeah, so we're deglazing it, and now you see it is simmering right here. And then bring the pan and start rapidly simmering. So now the squash, and we see they had some very orange part, very orange, and some was not that as orange, to yellow. So these are the different ripeness of the same squash. And what happens when we cook it? When we cook it, the same ripeness. So when we cook it, what will happen is the one that is ripe will melt, and that will give the thickness to the soup. So this soup, eventually we're going to show, like once it is ready, that it could be blended. But once, even if you decide not to blend it and just whisk it vigorously, so all the ripe part of it will melt into it, and that will give us a kind of thickness. So it's not going to be watery. Okay? So blending is an option on that, right? So here we go. It's like we get into a simmer, and then we're going to add 1 quart of coconut milk in there. Now this coconut milk could be substituted with heavy cream, half and half, milk, rice milk, any kind of liquid that can go in. But like, so we have chosen coconut milk first of all because of its the fat content in it, and also it complements the squash soup really well. Okay? And this has been a new trend to use coconut milk in the soup, such that it is also vegan. So we're not using any animal product in there, okay? And it tastes real good. So here's our squash going. Now what I'm going to do is I'm going to add my coconut milk to it, and this is 1 quart of coconut milk. Goes in here.
And coconut milk has its own flavor, you know, compared to dairy milk, which doesn't have a whole lot of flavor or very mild. Coconut milk is kind of sweet. So that, like Rahul said, it complements really well with the spices that we have in here and with the squash itself, which is sweet. But that's also why it's important to add salt and pepper too, because that helps to balance out the flavor. So it's not. So
now we are still at a high heat because we just added a liquid that is at room temperature or below room temperature. And we're gonna wait for it to simmer, and you see how the top layer is moving right now, and it's gonna come to a simmer very quick. And once it comes to a simmer, we see the strength of the heat on each of our stoves and see that it doesn't get burnt at the bottom, and we just let it cook through slowly. Because there is enough moisture in there, enough flavor, and
yeah, what you can do at this point, so this is before the flavor is really developed and it's before we puree the soup. So you can taste it now and then you can taste it later and see how the difference, how much of a difference there is. The flavor is not fully developed yet, so you'll see how it changes. And also now that you know the ingredients that we've put in there individually, you can start to think about which of these flavors do you like best? And do you think that you might want to add more ginger so it's a little bit more like kind of spicy? Or do you want to add more cinnamon because that's like a comforting, warming spice flavor that you enjoy? So you can add those now if you like, or you can add them at the end when we're pureeing it. You'll still have time at the end.
So now generally on a high heat when you stir it, and it should not take more than 15 minutes for it to cook. And by the time it's either ready to be consumed or to taste, or if you want to process it to blend it, that could be done as well, right? So what I'm going to do, you see this is boiling right now. Boil. I'm going to move this so that under the camera we can do the next step of it, okay? Such that it becomes a complete meal. So as we talk about the plan of work earlier, so now we know that the squash takes the longest time. So like if we start right here, so we process the squash, then we get the squash on the heat and let the heat do the job, and all the spices and ingredients blend themselves and try to be something. And what they're trying to be is soup. And then at that point, we let the heat do its job, as you said, to keep an eye on it, and we start the next piece of it. And the best thing to complement a soup on any part of the day in fall, where the temperatures are a little getting chillier, chilly, and then is a nice toast or a hot sandwich. So what we're going to do is we're going to make a simple open face sandwich, you may call it, and we're calling it tostada. Fancy name to that, and that is with goat cheese and multigrain bread slice and pears. And the pears may take a different approach to that this time. Is we're gonna peel it like a chiffonade, like a ribbon, and then we're gonna chiffonade that, and then we're gonna put it on the toast, and we make it like an open face sandwich or an open face tostada, which complements this dish real well, and it is all fall, and it is like all complementing each other. So now you see that the heat is coming up here and is going, and this squash, as I mentioned earlier, cooks really, really, really fast. Okay? So I'm going to move this away from here, and then we will continue with making the tostada and so on. Thank you.
Yeah, so we use an induction burner. That's what you're looking at right now on the overhead view, and it doesn't cook as well as a normal stove. So Rahul is putting it on the gas stove, and it's going to make it go at a normal speed, not too slow. But yeah, you can put it on, keep it on high, and that, you know, the heat, like Rahul said, let the heat do its job. It creates more flavor, helps to develop the flavor, and some of the liquid will evaporate, and that's okay. When we puree it all together at the end, it's gonna make one smooth soup. But yeah, so that's, if yours has been boiling already, that's okay. Ours, like I said, it just took a little bit to get there. But yeah, so it'll be about 15, maybe 20 minutes until it's until the squash is soft enough. But that's your goal. You want your squash to be soft enough to be like fork tender. So if it's not fork tender by the time ours is, then you might want to keep going a little bit longer. That'll depend on the size of the squash, the way you cut it, how small it was or big it was. But okay, I'm going to let Rahul get to the tostada now.
Okay, so now we're going to make a tostada. Now, this is a very good, very sustainable way to use the ends of the bread loaf or anything, any of the bread that you have in the house that you do not immediately want to use to make a sandwich or anything, that could be easily turned into a tostada. And we are using cheese and pear but it could be anything that you can want to put on it. It could be animal protein, it could be tofu, it could be anything that make a tostada. So the main ingredient would be just we need a bread, that is the base, and any kind of cheese that can go on, any kind of spread. It could be a bean spread. It can also be hummus. You can use the hummus as well on that to make a warm tostada, right? So now here we're gonna go. I have taken a pear, a regular pear that you're gonna find is a anju pear, and we're gonna peel it first, okay? So I'm just gonna peel it, and why we're peeling it, such that the thickness of the cut is so small that it cures itself in the heat, it cooks in the heat, okay?
This is also called, when you use like a peeler to cut something like this, to slice it really thin, we also call it shaving. So you're shaving the pear right now. It's just another way, like another tool would be like a mandolin. Sometimes people use that to make a really, really thin slice. But again, this Y peeler is a great tool to have. We're going to show you actually another cool tool at the end that Rahul, I think, said he's had his immersion blender for 20 years or something. Like that's a really great kitchen tool to have too. So a Y peeler, if you don't have it, is a great and very inexpensive thing to get, and an immersion blender is still pretty cheap and a good tool to get. We'll show you that at the end. You'll see how easy it is.
So here we have, see, I have peeled the whole pear without losing anything into it, just getting close to the seeds. And so the whole pear is done here. Now this recipe calls for 2 tostada bread because it's going to be cut into half, and we're trying to make a 4-portion dinner, okay, or a meal, I would say. So now you see this under the camera, this all peeled up pears, and then we're going to go here and just julienne this, okay. So just julienne would be not like a fancy cut, but just something that helps it to get a little bit thinner and easy to handle, right? And this is it. We don't need to cut it any further. So this is our pear that has been prepped, and pretty simple, easy. And the idea is like this: once it exposed to the heat, so by the time the bread and the cheese almost got ready to eat, this one is ready to go as well. Okay, so we all finished at the same time on this. So I'm gonna take one of bread here, and I have chosen to use multigrain bread here, and then so I have goat cheese right here. I'm gonna crumble it, and the cheese could be of your choice, whatever you may want. So like to crumble this, and the cheese crumble, the best when it's a little it is just out of the refrigerator, because once it comes to the room temp, it starts getting gooey because it's a soft cheese. And then so we have a decent amount of goat cheese on here. Like the recipe says for 2.5 ounces per toast, and which we had tested on. And then we go here and we generously put the goat cheese, the pears on top of the goat cheese, and then we just kind of press it in a little bit so that the goat cheese is helps to adhere it to the bread. And here we go. So this is our tostada. So we're gonna put our tostada right here on the stove, and we said that we have our oven ready at 350, and then we're gonna go and pop this inside by the time the soup is cooking. So I'm gonna go and put this in the oven, and once it comes out, this is how it looks right now. Once it comes out, we're gonna do salt, pepper. We can do salt, pepper, season it, and then olive oil on that, and it's ready to go. Okay.
And now is also the time to put the seeds in the oven with the tostada.
Yeah. So we have the seeds. So now we are hitting the oven. So we're gonna do it at the same time. These are the seeds, and this is the tostada. So I'm gonna put this in the oven. Eliza, back to you.
Yep. So if you would like to sprinkle any salt and pepper on the seeds, you can. That you can do that at the end as a garnish on the soup as well. But so now that we've got the things in the oven, we have some time to kill while the soup is simmering. So those of you that are cooking along, any questions so far or any concerns? Anything we can help you with? So take that as a no. I think everyone's okay. All right, cool. So I have some, while you're stirring your soup and watching your tostada through your oven door, I have some slides I can share. So just a few slides about mindful eating. So I'm just going to share. Hopefully you can all see this okay. But firstly, winter squash. So I talked about this a bit already, but also if you don't follow our Instagram, I would suggest that you do. I'll put our Instagram name in the chat so you can find us. I run our Instagram as well, and I just posted a video yesterday about winter squash. So I've got this information here that's also on our video. So I mentioned the vitamin A content, and I talked about the benefits of the seeds. Also, as with any plants, squash is high in fiber, so that's also good. In 1 cup of roasted butternut squash, there's 6 grams of fiber, and also up to 160% of the vitamin A needs for the day in 1 cup of roasted butternut squash. So very, very rich in vitamin A. Squash is also considered a complex carbohydrate because of its fiber and micronutrient content. So yes, winter squash is starchier than summer squash. It is considered a starchy vegetable. However, it's not, white rice is a starch, white bread is a starch. This is not the same starch. This is a complex carb because it's got lots of health benefits along with the starchiness. Something that makes winter squash what they are. So they're called winter squash not because they're harvested in the winter, but because when they're harvested in the fall, they can last. You can just keep them like in a cool, dark place on your counter for up to 3 months, depending on the type of squash, because they have such a thick skin. Delicata squash is one that Rahul mentioned at the very beginning that has a delicate skin that you can actually eat. That one does not last as long because the skin is thinner, but like pumpkin, if you're going to cook a pumpkin, you can store it for a few months and it'll still be good. So Rahul, jump in at any point if you need to talk about anything, but I'm going to go through these slides here. So mindful eating is a term that we've all heard of before. However, I feel like oftentimes it's kind of seen as like a weird hokey thing where it's like, close your eyes, envision the soup, and it's just kind of like annoying in my opinion. So it's not meant to be that. Mindful eating really is about just being conscious of what we're eating and why we're eating it. So this is a way to like reconnect your stomach and your brain. And oftentimes we ignore, we all have such busy lives. So we are, we might be hungry, but we don't have time for lunch, or we wake up late and we have to rush to work and we don't have time for breakfast, or maybe we don't have time to make like a full filling meal. So we go with just a snack and then the snack is not filling enough. So we're hungry later, that kind of thing. So what's important is your body, when your stomach is growling, when your body is giving you signals that you're hungry, maybe it's that your stomach is growling, maybe it's that you're realizing you can't pay attention suddenly and you're like agitated at work and you can't focus on what you're doing. Maybe you just need a snack. So that your body's trying to tell you something. And when we ignore those cues, we're conditioning ourselves to not trust our bodies. And that can have harmful benefits or harmful effects rather over time. So it's important to relearn to trust and to listen to your hunger cues and also your fullness cues. So just as all of us have experienced being really hungry and not having time to eat, we have definitely also experienced eating way too much food and feeling really uncomfortable because of it. So both of ends of the spectrum are not super great. Of course, if they happen every so often, it is what it is. This is life. But it's important to try to listen to what your body is telling you. And when you do, you end up actually, when people pay more attention to, I've had enough food, I don't need to feel super overstuffed to feel satisfied, then you actually eat less food. And when you pay more attention to what foods you truly enjoy and what flavors you really enjoy, you sort of get more control over what you're eating. If you're eating foods that you're enjoying and you're not totally banning certain foods from your life, then you don't find yourself losing control when you eat certain foods that are like quote unquote forbidden. So mindful eating is about prioritizing foods that make you feel good mentally and physically. If you're enjoying eating it, that's good. And if you don't have a stomach ache 30 minutes later, that's great. That means you're doing the right thing. So this is something I won't get into this in super detail, but anyone who's interested in the, body positivity movement, or, trying to get away from weight stigma and harmful diet culture things, you've probably heard about the phrase called intuitive eating. And this is the concept of intuitive eating is in very short explanation. The concept of intuitive eating is to reduce or eliminate restrictions. So rather than saying, oh, I can only have one chocolate chip cookie, or I can't have candy, even though it's Halloween, I can't have it because it's bad. When we restrict these foods from ourselves, it's human nature. When you don't allow yourself to have something, you want it more. It's human nature. We all are like this. So with the intuitive eating practice, if you allow yourself to eat these foods, yeah, maybe in the beginning, you might eat too much. If you allow yourself to eat chocolate chip cookies, you might eat, I'm quote unquote, too much. It's all a learning process. So, the tostada is going already. Is that done, Rahul?
Yeah, it is. So it is as quick. So now here we have the tostada ready, and then here's the seeds are ready. Okay, the seeds they already get crisp, and it's just coming out of the oven like hot, and I can say very, very hot. So we're gonna put it aside for a minute, and then we're gonna look at the soup, because the way we have timed it is that when our prep for the tostada is ready, our soup is ready as well. So let's see if we hold it in the time.
Okay. If the soup's not ready yet, we still have some time. It's 5:48, so we can go a few more minutes, I think. But yeah, the intuitive eating thing is just that you allow yourself to have what you want. Oh, the soup looks great.
Yep. So
time you end up not losing control when you eat those forbidden foods, because you allow yourself to have them whenever you want. And then you end up choosing foods that are better for you and make you feel better, because that's your main focus.
So as you see here, this squash cooks really, really fast. So even if you have not broken down into small pieces, it's okay, because it is going to gradually, once the heat reaches it, it breaks down very quick. So it is so like soft right now, tender, that I can break it in my hand like this. So it's just mash it up, okay? And this is where we want it to be. At this point, you can look at it and see this could be how as it is, like the rustic way, where it's not blended or anything else. So you have it like,
yeah. So there's a few ways you can do this at this point. If you prefer to eat the soup like this without pureeing it, that's completely fine. So if you want to, we encourage you to try it at this point and see how it's doing. If you like it as is, no need to puree it. But this is to try it, see if you want to add any more of any of the ingredients.
So this time is the mindful piece of this recipe, is that you taste it. And once you taste, you look at the texture, that you look at it, look at what makes it look good, taste good, and what your hearts feel like adding to it. Because every individual have something a little bit different that they might like, and the whole thing is to we cook what we like to eat. Right. And that's how it is, and cook it good.
I'm going to share another screen one more time just to show some mindful eating like practices. So the first thing to do when you taste it is to try to identify the flavors, and again, figure out Do you prefer it as is? Do you prefer more salt, more pepper, more ginger, more sage, any, whatever you'd like to add? Also figure out how much you like it and if you want to change it. If you don't like it, there's no need to eat it. If you could add something else to make you like it more, absolutely do that. Also, it's important to pay attention to your hunger level at the start and then your fullness level at the finish and how you feel related to these levels. So if you're feeling really hungry, do you feel agitated? Or if you're feeling really full, do you then feel like really lethargic and like, blah? And how does this food make you feel physically and mentally? So eating this food, the act of eating this food, how do you feel eating it? If you are not feeling good in any way, there is no need to eat a food. Doesn't matter if it's the healthiest, most beneficial food that's ever been on the planet. If you don't like it, don't eat it. Food is meant to be enjoyed. Yes, food provides us nutrition, and that is also an extremely important part of food, but it's really, really important to make sure that you're enjoying the food that you eat. That's a really big, important part of life. Food is a very important thing. So if you've tried it at this point, tried your soup, and you feel like it needs anything, then here's your time to add it, because we are about to show you how to puree the soup. And pureeing it, you'll also see, if you try it at this point, and then when you puree it, you'll see that the flavor changes a bit too, because now it's all kind of like homogenized. When you blend it all together, it becomes one flavor. You still have multiple layers of flavor, but you get a little bit extra in there, I think.
Okay, so coming back to this, this is a simple version, and we see how with the time with cutting the squash, and only thing that we did not prep was the ginger, garlic, and onions. We said that this recipe is this food is ready to go right now. So what we're gonna do, we're gonna blend it. So now remember, hot liquid, whenever they hit a blender, what happens? They get agitated. So once the agitation is there and it is hot, so it helps the steam to form, and the things start to, it may jump out of your blender. So if you are using a blender like this, if you're using a blender like this, you have to be super careful that you put on your blender bottom, and then after that you start the machine and then you ladle the soup little by little. Do not fill this jar and then put on the machine and then try to, because everything, because of the steam formed at the right at the bottom, everything is going to come out. Okay, so that is one very, very important tip, and the most important tip that I want to give. And then I'm going to put my blender from my drawer right here, and then you go. So, and then, so this is our stick blender, and very handy, as we know. And there we go. I'm just going to blend it in a circular motion and up and down.
Yeah, so stick blender, also called immersion blender. This is the tool that we mentioned before. This is an incredibly helpful tool in the kitchen. If you ever make like soups like this, like pureed soups are so great in the fall and winter, and you'll see, actually, you see how the color is changing. I'm gonna make that a big screen so you can see the color is getting more orangey because we're pureeing the squash and the color is being released. But this blender is also great for like tomato sauce, or anything where you're doing like a one pot meal. If you're making the sauce in the pot and then you add the chicken or something like that, this blender is incredibly helpful. It's just got a little blade underneath, and that's it. Blends it all up.
So this, as we said, we tried the soup. We have tried the recipe, and it's not very hard and fast rule that you have to just go with equal batch measurement and everything. But if you look the consistency, and I'm going to put it on a plate here to see it is perfect consistency here. As you can see, it's like a proper soup. It's not too thick, not too thin, and it's just ready to go. And the seasoning that we have measured and put has been just fine. I tasted it, and so I encourage everyone who's cooking to taste it at different steps. And also in the tasting, the salt and the spices and the other stuff, the important thing is that when you're using the powdered spice, we don't saute them too much, because guess what? Powdered spices are very close to sawdust and they burn quick. Once they burn, they lose all their flavor, and then all they impart is bitterness to the dish. Second thing is, if you want to add salt, And if you think that what salt you do, don't go all the way. Add half first, and then taste, and then gradually increase to where do you want it to be. Because the guess and adding salt could be very pricey, because you can add salt, but you cannot take it out. Okay, and then to reduce the salt, you would add more water, but then it would dilute the rest of the richness of the whole dish. Okay, so this is a couple of tips. Now I'm going to plate it, and you're going to see how the whole dish look like. Okay, so this is my.
If you pureed, and if you feel like it needs anything else, you can add it and blend it up with whatever you've just added. But I hope you've noticed a difference in flavor. When we tested this recipe, you could definitely notice a difference when you tasted it before and after pureeing. It's definitely, I prefer the puree. I think it's also like it's a pretty color, you know, color doesn't quite come through exactly how it looks in real life over this camera, but it's a nice, pretty fall color.
So now we have our tostada. I'm going to take our tostada, which is still hot, and we say, as we see that the timing that we were talking about, that the tostada get ready, the soup is ready. By the time the tostada is coming out, we blend it so it is hot, and this is hot and is ready to go, and that's the best time to enjoy it. So we're just going to finish it a little bit with some salt, pepper seasoning here. There's salt, pepper here. Okay, and then a little bit of olive oil that I put a spoon on top of it. So this is my olive oil right here, and I'm going to spoon some of it. Drizzle on top. That means that gives it a good appeal, and also it looks great and tastes well as well, because you can taste the finishing olive oil on that. And now we're going to ladle our soup right here, and you see it is like how thick and nice and ready to go, with the specks of vegetables you can see in there. I mean, like the specks of herbs. And this is your portion of soup right here, nice and clean, shiny. And then after that, we're gonna go. I'm gonna put this pot away. Right. And
we've got our garnishes for the soup too.
Yep. Yes. So we're gonna get to that in a minute. So now this is all looking great, and I'm gonna put just a little bit more. So it's basically a meal by itself. Okay. And then we have our tostada that we're gonna break it into half. We're gonna just cut it, and I would say just right here. So it is nice and beautiful, and you can see from the side, like it has got all the goat cheese and pear and everything, and then we put it on the side, and then we're gonna go finish the soup. So finishing the soup, many things could be done. We have made our pumpkin seeds, and we utilize them. I mean, the squash seeds. We utilize them, so we sprinkle them on top. They give the crunch. Then we're gonna do a little bit of sage. That is the only herb that we're utilizing here. We put a little bit of chiffonade of sage, and sage is very strong, and if you like it, it's good. But if you use in moderation, it is not as pungent at all. And we're gonna finish with a little bit of a swirl of olive oil right here. Okay. And there we go. This is your healthy restaurant style butterscotch soup made at home.
So pretty. That swirl of olive oil, I like everything finished in olive oil is just so much better.
This is our old dish. Right
Yeah,
here.
that's gorgeous. We can see all of it.
Yeah. So I hope you make it and enjoy it and make it again, and keep it one of these recipes in your recipe bank, that you can make it every fall, and then you invite people, you have friends, you can share with them, and tell us about our VTK, of course, and the recipes that we try here, and remember it for every year, because these recipes are there to stay, and it will always going to be everyone's favorite. And this is one thing good to have in your recipe book, to make something out of nothing in no time. Okay. And create a wow factor, so whoever is on your dining table with you, with your family, and share it. Okay, thank you.
Yeah. Thank you all. I know it's 6 o'clock, so if anyone has to check out, go for it. But This can be done with any kind of winter squash. It can be modified, however you like. The tostada can be a grilled cheese instead, whatever you prefer. But a good pureed winter squash soup that can be made in under an hour is pretty great.
And can you utilize any of this squash right here? Any of these could be used. Wow.
Molly says team puree. Yeah, exactly. Pureeing a soup, I feel like a winter squash soup, it's got to be pureed.
Great.
So good. Well, thank you all very much. We really appreciate it. If anyone has any questions, we're happy to take them, but thank you for being here. And we hope that you'll make this soup and let us know how it goes. And we hope to see you next time.
Thank you.
Thank
Cooking
you.
long. Can't wait to eat it.
Yeah, awesome.
Thanks, guys. Of course.
See you later. Enjoy your soup.
Thank you. Good night.
Thank you.
Bye.